Ben Loveridge, and I'll tell you a little bit about Ben in just a moment. Just before we start, I just wanted to do a little bit of exercise with you. So the first thing is, can you give me some heart emojis just to say hi, and just so you know where the emoji buttons are? Fabulous. That's great. Thank you so much. That's brilliant. Now, what we're going to do is we'll mute everybody, and I'm about to do that right now. So you'll have a little notification come up. And that just really makes sure that there's no background noise whilst the guest speaker is speaking. There may be a point during today where the guest speaker will ask you to interact with him, and will then unmute you to do that. Otherwise, you'll stay muted. Any questions, if we can leave them to the end, please. And I just want to show you how that's going to work. So I'm going to now turn on the ability for you to raise and have a little pop-up come up on the right-hand side of your screen that says raise hand. So if you click on it, the button will turn blue and you should have a hand go above your head. If you want to just quickly try that for me, please. If you see it on the right-hand side of your screen, it says raise hand. Can you all find that? Brilliant. Okay, fantastic. So I've got a few people who said that they want to ask questions. So that's how we'll do it right at the very end. Okay. So I'm going to just turn that off for the time being. So that will disappear from your screen for now. So when we get to the end, when we ask questions, I'll turn that on. And then if you have any questions, just pop that button and I'll come to you individually, call out your name. And when I prompt you, you'll then be able to ask your question. Is everyone okay with that? Just give me a clapping emoji if you're happy with that. Fantastic, brilliant. Okay, let's get going. So let me tell you a little bit about Ben. So this is Ben Loveridge, and he is the Immersive Media Coordinator for VR and AR from the University of Melbourne. And Ben assists with the integration of spatial technology in teaching and research across the university. He coordinates activities in the Learning Environments VR Lab, as well as provides technical and development consultation to staff and students through workshops and masterclass sessions. He is currently studying a Masters of Music, investigating the intersection of networked and virtual reality. He was inducted as an Institute Fellow for Virtual Reality. The Music Therapy in Virtual Environments project was as a finalist in the 2017 National Disability Awards and reached the 2018 iAwards National Finals in the Infrastructure and Platform Innovations of the Year category, which is fantastic. I think we'll have a few claps for Ben there. That's brilliant work. Thank you so much. Okay, so Ben, I'll hand over to you and I'll move out of your way.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Appreciate that. And thanks for all your help. Welcome. And fantastic today at the Educators Conference. And joining me on stage, it will also be Jeanette Tamplin, who's the lead researcher on this project. She's been able to take time out of her busy schedule to join us. So thanks for that, Jeanette. We're going to talk a bit today about the work we've been doing on a project that's been running for some time. And I'll make it interactive throughout. So if you have any questions, feel free to pipe up. I'd be interested to know what everyone else is doing. Just a quick show of hands. Is anyone here working in the music therapy or even the VR music space? Excellent. We've got Paul and we've got a few people there. So to listen to hear what other people are doing as well. So what we've been working on for the last 5 years is a way to use technology to solve music therapy access issues. And here's Jeanette holding the guitar. She's the lead music therapy researcher on the project. Yunhan Lai was the developer, and there's me on the left-hand side there. And we also had it's a team, interdisciplinary team. We've got some other researchers as well who've been doing this. And what we did was we created a music therapy solution with a VR prototype and low latency audio at the same time. So essentially we were allowing people who had spinal cord injuries, who live remotely to each other, to participate in group music therapy singing sessions. And we'll be talking about that as we go along, talking about accessibility issues with VR, how do you sing online in real time with people at the same time. We'll do a little demonstration of that as well. And then we'll wrap up and talk about some of the future research that we've got going. We do have a 1-minute video that we'll play that gives a nice little summary of what we're doing. Hi to the new people that have joined us. So I'm going to play that video now and then we'll go from there.
So today we really wanted to explore what the experience of singing in virtual reality was like for people with spinal cord injury. And the idea behind that is we want to test a way of delivering this therapeutic intervention that's accessible and acceptable to people with spinal cord injury, with the aim of ultimately improving their breathing and voice function. So what we found really interesting is that some people, when they're in a virtual reality experience, that they feel less inhibited. They're in a persona, they're in an avatar, or it's some form of mask. So it's less confronting than eyeballing someone across the room and singing with them when you're not really that confident with your singing voice. The next step is for now to take what we've learned in this process and be able to apply that into a clinical research project and actually look at the effects of the singing intervention in an online format for delivery. But to do that, we need more funding to buy equipment and to stay up to date with the latest things that are available, and to be able to provide this really amazing and innovative opportunity to people with limited mobility to help them to access therapeutic music interventions.
Thanks, Jeanette, for that introduction. Just a little bit about myself. I help coordinate a number of the VR and activities at the university, so mainly involved in assisting in the integration of this type of tech in teaching and learning. And that's taken the form of having a virtual reality lab where we have staff and students come in and we help them with getting to know the technology. There's still a lot of people who've never tried VR before. I'm sure many of you working in this area will have seen that. But we've had artists in residence come in using Tilt Brush. We've also gone on virtual tours. So in Altspace a number of years ago, there was a tour of a volcano, which was an amazing experience and really showed to us the potential of what this type of immersive type of tech can be and do. One of the big projects we helped work on was integrating virtual reality into the biology prac classroom. So there's 2,000 students who all get to experience a tour through the human body during their prac. So sort of a background of some of the work we've been exploring over the last 5 years. And it was, about 2014. You can see how long we've been working on this project for. We're using the DK2 there. Jeanette came to us and asked, is it possible to sing with others on the internet? The problem being that in their music therapy classes, it's difficult to get people together in person to do that. So we thought about it and
Ben,
said, look,
Ben.
Yes.
Sorry, just to interrupt you for a second.
Yeah.
Can I just double check? Can everybody see the screen? Is everyone seeing the slides? It should be a picture of someone in a VR headset with a guitar. Can you just do a clapping emoji if you can see that? Okay, if you can't see that, what you need to do is to go to your settings and re-enter the space again, okay? Because that might be the cause of the problem.
Okay, so we've got some people who can see the slides.
Yeah,
and
some people
I'll
can't.
continue.
Yeah, but if
Sure.
some people can, then it means that it's an individual person.
Yep, got it. Okay, well, I'll continue on. I'll explain the slides a bit more. If anyone can't see them, we'll talk it through. So we did test in Altspace as well when we first started working out whether it's possible to sing online. Can you be in virtual reality at the same time? It was things that we didn't know the answer to, but we thought we'll give it a go. So Jeanette, this is a point where I'll maybe get you to talk a little bit about some of the your work with people with quadriplegia. Tim, were we able to get Jeanette unmuted, and let's have Jeanette talk a little bit about some of her work. We can't hear Jeanette at the moment. There we go. Yep, great.
Yeah.
Everyone can hear Jeanette?
Yeah, so I guess the background in that led me to come and talk with Ben and others at the university in the beginning was that we had done some research that involved face-to-face singing pilot randomised control trial for people with quadriplegia, and we had difficulties with recruitment because in Australia, being quite a big geographical spread, there were lots of people who would have been eligible and would have liked to have joined in, but just couldn't physically travel due to distance or time or physical disability. So it was really just a way of trying to think outside the square about making this intervention that we had some preliminary evidence for it being effective and accessible and enjoyable for people with quadriplegia, to make that more accessible for people, and trying to use technology and the internet to make that happen. Is that kind of what you wanted to?
Yeah.
The background?
Yeah, definitely. So with all these issues, with the risk of social isolation and depression, the big one, of course, accessibility due to time and cost of travel, and that's what we've seen with this conference, is that we've got people from all around the world able to join at the one time. So we thought there's definitely something in that we can explore. And Jeanette's research into this area has shown that singing can help with health and well-being as well. And it also it's accessible to everyone. Everyone can sing. It doesn't matter how in tune or not it is. It's something that everyone can do, and it's a great social aspect. So what to do is try and sing over video conferencing and also in VR. So this is where I'd like to do a demo and unmute everyone. Let's unmute everyone's mic. And what I'm going to do is count to 10 in time, and I'd like everyone to count along with me. And this is going to be a latency test, just to see, hey, can we all sing in time at once? So Tim, if you're able to unmute everyone, so we've got the ability to have a voice. Okay, we got a voice for everyone. I can hear a bit of rumbling in the background there. Excellent. So I'm going to count to 10. You count along with me as we go, and we'll listen to see what happens. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. So for me, I could hear everyone about a second behind. Did everyone else hear people at different times? Put your hand up if it sounded like a cacophony of numbers at different times. So that means that everyone is located at different parts of the world due to the latency of internet and the time it takes to digitize your audio, send it online, render it out. That's what you're hearing with the delay. It's usually not a problem when we're talking to each other. So if I'm talking to Tim, we'll have a conversation. It's stacking it in turns. It's asynchronous in that sense. But when you're doing music, timing is critical. If you're out by a tiny amount, it's really noticeable. So for example, if you clap your hands or your controllers or whatever you've got as fast as you can, the delay between the first clap and the second clap is probably about 100 milliseconds. But in order to need to be around 25 milliseconds, which is a quarter of the time it takes you to clap your hands together. So it's a very short space of time, very critical. So video conferencing, virtual reality, it's difficult to get in that time frame. So what we did then is spent a few years researching how can we make audio be sent across the internet as fast as possible. And this is the solution we ended up coming to. So using pretty much standard off-the-shelf hardware and software that was open source, developed by Stanford, called Jacktrip, running a microphone into an audio interface, into a computer, through the router, back onto the internet, and back to someone else running the same software. We've been able to achieve this under 25 milliseconds latency. The caveat being that you have to be within, say, 500 or 1,000 kilometers to that person, because the speed of light actually is not fast enough to sing with someone intercontinental. You can't sing with someone from Australia to New York in that time. You'd have to go faster than the speed of light. So the inherent challenges. And has anyone here ever tried singing Happy Birthday over Skype before with someone else? If you've done that, then you'll have experienced that before. Yeah, definitely. The other aspect of trying to use virtual reality with people with spinal cord injuries is the controllers are not designed for accessibility. Anyone who's sort of worked in this area will know that if you've got limited hand mobility, you might not be able to squeeze the controllers, click a button. So we discovered that quite early on, that the HTC Vive or even the Oculus Rift, the early stages, were just not going to work. So we needed a different way to control things. So after some amount of testing, we did come to developing our own prototype app for the Gear VR, because we discovered that gaze control was a really great way. If you've got good head mobility but limited hand mobility, wherever you look, if the pointer on your gaze goes for 3 seconds, that's effectively like the click of a button. So VTime actually have this use this concept, and so we really liked how that worked, and so we incorporated that style into the navigation of the prototype app. But at the same time, we've also got the headset running via using the audio as a separate amount of audio. Is there any questions so far? I'm happy to break if anyone's got questions about these specific things. Yes, Bob. Tim, we'll see if we can get Bob to respond, ask the question. All right, have we got you, Bob? No, not yet. Tim, are we able to unmute? But let me try doing an unmute all. Hey, Bob, you want to go for it?
Just on the controller issue, have you or any of your co-researchers experimented with custom design controllers using the hardware to get around some of the controller interface issues with the standard controllers?
You're talking about, slightly missed the start, but it was using custom control mapping on the standard controllers?
No, sorry. There are a number of the hardware development kit to make your own customized controllers. Have any of you experimented with your own customized controllers that are more suitable for some of the patients that you're dealing with?
We didn't. We probably thought about it, but we just don't have those sort of resources, engineering resources in the project group at the time to really explore that. We wanted to find a solution that was off the shelf and simple, but certainly interested in what is possible. But yeah, great question, and there's lots of tangents that we could certainly do this way too. If there are any other questions, I'll continue on. If there's no more,
I believe I was next. I got it right, so I believe I'm next.
Great. Okay.
Question.
Yeah.
So you guys moving further on, like we haven't quite covered this topic yet, but in your opinion, what music topic, like pop, country, rock, like what do you think influences people in the best possible way? Like which overall topic of music, which do you think?
Sure. So in this context, Jeanette, you might want to talk to this one, because you had some very specific needs for this type of singing.
Yeah, I think in terms of, that's a kind of a general question, and it's a bit hard to give a specific answer to, because what we know from music therapy research and practice is that music that's a person's own preferred type of music is the best genre to work in. So I couldn't really say that there's one particular genre that's kind of better overall for everyone, because I think that's a very big individual preference issue. But in terms of the singing intervention that we were doing in this study, we're trying to incorporate individual preference as well as songs that were going to stimulate people's voices and respiratory systems to kind of have that effect. There's something that kind of was a bit of a workout, I guess, as well as music people enjoyed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense, because everybody's different. People prefer different types of music, and that was a stupid question, because it only makes sense that there's not one specific type, because everybody's different. Yeah, that makes sense now.
Yeah, no, I mean, actually is a really valid question too in relation to music you can sing in real time, because our initial response when Jeanette said, can we sing online, is that, well, yes, we can, but what we can do is sing drone notes, do vocal exercises that don't have any rhythm. But as soon as you want rhythm and pop songs, it requires a very specific style of singing. So it ended up being pop music was definitely what we wanted to go down the path of.
And with audio latency, what do you think? Which genre of music do you think works the best with multiple people on different audio, like with audio latency? Like which? Yeah.
Yeah, so if there are people with different audio latencies that's beyond this 25 millisecond time, then it really is very much a case of doing long drone notes. Anything that doesn't have rhythmical content, you can do that. There's been Skype orchestras being done before where people
really?
are just
That's
singing
interesting.
randomly. So anything
Yeah, and
below
it kind of
25
has,
milliseconds needs tight
it
music.
sort of sounds a bit Gregorian chant-esque, you know, like there's just lots of harmonies and long notes coming in and out. So there's not so much of a timing issue. It's more about harmony and melody than rhythm or time.
Yeah, and I just have a perfect example for those of you who don't know what like audio latency is. If you look on the news, you'll actually see when they talk to somebody that's in a completely different area than them, they'll say something, and then that person, that's the broadcaster, will wait a few seconds before saying something because they can't actually hear them until that sound has gone through. So it's not instant.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the app that we ended up building, we designed it around gaze-based controls, and you could choose your avatar. So much like, say, Altspace, a lot of the social VR apps do this. You can choose your avatar. You can also choose the scene that you're in, and we'll show some video content of that as well as we go. Is anyone here familiar with the song Waltzing Matilda? It's a bit of a classic Australian tune. Yeah, excellent, excellent. Because it's out of copyright, it's one of those ones that you can use in research projects and online easily. Music copyrights are a doozy. Okay, yeah, not everyone can see the slides, but we're just showing an example of what the gaze control looks like when you're in the VR space. So here's an overview of the integration of all of the different elements. So initially we built it around the Gear VR. We've since moved to the Oculus Go. And there's a screenshot of Jack Trip and how you connect everyone up. It's quite a little complex setup, but just using standard off-the-shelf audio equipment means that it's certainly within reach. It just takes a while to get your head around it. Combining that with the custom VR application. So what it has meant is we have two separate systems running simultaneously. We were not able to get low latency music inside the VR app, mainly because we couldn't get the low latency audio working through PC. Works really well on a Mac, but doing PC and low latency audio was quite challenging, so we didn't go down that path, but it's definitely something that we would be keen to do for future work. And of course, the challenges in complexity were huge. So you're combining the audio, the VR, and also people with limited accessibility. So that made it for quite a challenging thing to set up, but we were able to get some really good feedback in the trials that we did. And as Jeanette alluded to in the video earlier, VR reduces singing inhibitions in a really big way. So it provides that mask for people. And I've certainly noticed it here. We've got a very active audience, and people are doing things that they wouldn't necessarily do in real life if this actual conference with your real face. So we do find that crossed over into the research that we were doing, that people felt less inhibited. And certainly for singing, that's actually really important, because everyone's been in that situation where they're embarrassed to sing in front of people. But we did find that people actually didn't mind singing when they felt like a stranger and they didn't really know the other people. So it's certainly an area we're keen to work in more. Of course, VR does provide that immersiveness into another world. So at the moment, even though we're in a physical space, we also half feel like we're in a virtual space. So everyone here is in two places at once. Certainly if they're in a VR headset, you have that greater sense of being somewhere else. So the next steps really for our project is to build on what we've done. We've ported the app into the Oculus Go, and we're now planning to do clinical trials with people in homes. The challenge in Australia, and I'm sure it's like this in many parts of the world, is there's just not a consistent internet connectivity from home to home. And unfortunately, that's a real problem when people are trying to connect to each other. If someone's on a really low speed connection or has high latency, it's going to impact on the session. So the quicker we can get fibre to the home, for instance, then the better these type of activities will be for low latency. In terms of further research, I'm now doing a master's in this area. I found it so fascinating a problem to work on that I've embarked on a research project which is looking at singing in VR versus video conferencing for all types of music. So as was mentioned earlier, it could be pop, it could be rock. How does singing or rehearsing music in VR compare to doing it via video conference? Of course, everyone's online now, so doing music rehearsals in real spaces is often difficult as people have trouble getting together. So how does that work in virtual reality or an online space is an area I think is really, it's going to be something that will just continually people will want to do. And I'm just showing a video at the moment, which is just showing an example of two people singing to some scrolling lyrics in big screen. So big screen's another social VR space that I'm looking at using. Old Space is great too. It's been a while since I've sort of been back in Old Space, but it certainly could be used for that as well. Getting scrolling lyrics happening, again, it's that challenge of how do you display lyrics in VR? We're not limited by a music stand. We can have lyrics. Do you have them appear floating in the air? Do you have them spinning on a ceiling fan? There's so many different things that can happen in VR. So certainly interested to hear of anyone else who's experimented with reading lyrics, or it's just actually like a karaoke program. Shout out to the team who've been involved in this project. It's one of those things, I remember when we first started it thinking this could be working on this for another 10 or 20 years, and the deeper we go, the deeper I think we discover that this is something that we will continue to work on and will continue to be something that is going to be important to explore. So at this stage we're happy to do some more discussion. If we've got any more questions, certainly for either myself or Jeanette.
Okay, I've just turned the questions selector on. So if anybody would like to ask a question, thank you so much, Ben. That was really interesting. Can I just make a quick point, something that came up in one of the earlier talks? And that was one member of the audience was actually a music teacher, and she was asking about the complexities of singing across the internet. I think you were in that session, weren't you, Ben? And I was mentioning this session and that she ought to come along to it because we were going to be talking about complexities of that. And it was quite interesting. I think this is a growing area. I think a lot more people are starting to really push the boundaries of how we can use spatial awareness, how we can use the internet, how we can use virtual reality. And it's interesting that we look at singing as something that's quite straightforward, and why shouldn't we be able to do it? But actually there are many complexities that relate to something as simple as singing online. And you mentioned the 25 millisecond, was it? 25 millisecond delay that you've got to get it below. Yeah. And yet that is a really complex and difficult thing to achieve. So that was really interesting. I found that quite fascinating. So thank you very much indeed for that. Okay, so we have some questions. And the first question, if I can ask, Megan, you have a question, please.
Hi. I don't have so much of a question. I have more of a comment.
Sure.
So I used to run the karaoke events here in Old Space. It was about 2 years ago. And what we would do is we would find the karaoke videos on YouTube, and then we would have those playing while they sang. And unfortunately, we couldn't have more than one person sing at a time because of the latency issue. And we've always hoped that there would be some way to kind of get around that. I also, I'm a mod for open mic here in All Space as well. We have that every Wednesday. And it started out so small. And it started out as like a come share your poems and stuff like that. And it turned into this massive event where people have finally felt comfortable singing for the first time in front of a live audience. They don't go out to karaoke bars, they don't do anything, and they've actually discovered their own talent here in Altspace and continue to perform and just get more and more comfortable and do multiple events just over a period of time. And I think it's just absolutely amazing.
That's great. Thank you so much, Megan. That's a very good point. Did you want to respond to that at all, Ben?
Yeah, it's great to hear those things. And at the music faculty here, we're really interested in using VR as an anxiety reduction tool because a lot of musicians have anxiety issues. Even the top musicians all have this issue. It's not about eliminating it, but how do you deal with it? And I think things like open mic nights in Altspace is fantastic to do that. But as you said, you can only have one person singing at once because of the latency. So there's a great use case for that. But if you say, hey, I want to sing along with you, it's going to be not great. And running the audio as a completely separate module is sort of the only way we've found around that. That's going to be technically tricky to do for everyone unless you have that set up. And it does require a fair bit of just getting around it, but it's not impossible. And there are groups who've been doing this for a number of years. The organisation NowNet Arts, they run a conference every year. They've done the second one, and that's all run in a video conferencing, but they use Jacktrip as the back end and run live musical performances with people around the world. And depending on where people are, they can be in time or a bit out of time. So that's definitely
really awesome.
Yeah, something to check them out because they're a great resource, and we're actually in the process of putting together step-by-step guides on how to do low latency singing. So if it's something that you've got people who are keen to explore, then I'm more than happy to help guide that.
Well, I have a friend here in the US, and she really, really wanted to sing with one of our friends who lives in Dubai. So you can imagine the latency issues there. And so what they did is one of my friends recorded one part and then sent it to the other friend who recorded the other part and then came up on stage and one of them played it through. So it was like they were singing together, but they had pre-recorded it, and that was their way of getting around it. So I think that this would be a really awesome alternative possibly for them.
Definitely. The low latency Jacktrip option is not going to solve the problem of Dubai to the States. It's going to be over 25 milliseconds, but that is definitely the good workaround is doing it sort of semi-synchronously. For sure.
All right,
Great. Thank you so much, Megan. That was a great comment. Thank you very much. Okay, so our next question now is from Feral Bob. So Bob, have you got a question, please?
Hi there again. Wondering, have you experimented when people have very different latencies of, and they're all agreeing to sing the same song, that you potentially kind of, time shift when people are starting to take into account those latencies, so that the actual final result that we're all hearing or is being recorded is in time. Has there been much work experimenting with that kind of stuttered starting times and how you would do that with users?
Yes, that was the first thing we attempted doing when we had a master's student working on it, to record everyone in time based on their latency. The problem is that if you're wanting everyone to hear each other at the same time, it's still going to be out of time. It's not solving the, hang on, I'm hearing this person sing after me, like when we did that test then when everyone was singing at the same time. Unless everyone else is muted, you're going to hear people out of time, even if your recording system is fixing the latency. So although you can do that to get your final recording time, problem is you're not hearing anyone else singing at the same time. It's all mute. You may as well just record asynchronously anyway. Yeah, we did look at that was the first thing we tried, but the goal for us was really just to get everyone as limit your geographical spread for what you need. We can work out a way to packets and internet and the speed of light. If anyone's got that solution, let us know.
I think they're still working on that one there. Okay, thank you, Bob. That was a great question. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, we have another question, and this time it's from Jim. Jim, have you got a question, please?
Yes, hi. One of the things I found remarkable is there's a game video playing on gaming console. And what's unique about it is that you can plug real instruments into it and play as a band together. And I've been waiting for that to come to virtual reality because it doesn't appear to be a problem with either synchronizing the instruments or the, since you're playing the real instrument with a visual cue. I've been a little mystified as to why that has not yet come by either Ubisoft or other people, other developers.
I love Rocksmith. It was when it first came out. I started using it, and I actually asked them this exact question a number of years ago and said, "Oh, this would be great as VR," and they replied back a bit condescending, "No, why would you need it in VR?" So I'm like, okay, whatever. Rocksmith does have, there is some inherent latency in there because when you plug your, say, guitar in, it is doing a bit of a conversion. I've measured it. It's sort of relatively short. It's in the tens of milliseconds of latency. I have thought about plugging the Rocksmith system into this. So if you ran your instruments through, say, Jack Trip, there's potential that you could synchronize it up. But because it's running virtual instruments, say, in an Xbox, the one I had, there was just a little bit too much latency for that because it's running through this other system. So my home studio rig now, I've got a lot of outboard effects gear, so I've got a virtual amplifier, so my guitar runs through all this equipment before it hits the computer. So you can get the sound to be sound guitar before it hits the computer. You've got electronic drums, then you're in a better place to send that over the internet. But I love the idea of Rocksmith, of, for instance, us being in a virtual stage, maybe the notes are coming at us, but the problem is with the visual latency of VR, we're seeing things a bit out of time. So it's an extra complexity there. But yeah, you would think that it's a no-brainer, and maybe Ubisoft are working on that because they do have a big VR team who are exploring things, but haven't seen it yet.
Sure, along with the vocals.
Fingers crossed.
Along with
the vocals, yeah, they added vocals along with the instruments.
Oh yeah, exactly. But again, you just run into that the latency issue there. But yeah, I love that idea. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
That's great, Jim. Thank you very much indeed for your question. That's a good question. We have one more question, please, Ben, and this question is from John. So, John, do you have a question, please?
Hi. Yes. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We can hear you.
So I've messed around with some of the interfaces as far as music going into a computer. I mean, it was like over 6-7 years ago. So I'm curious, what kind of interfaces between the microphone and into the PC or Mac are you using? I see there's a crimson red box that you're using. And I was hitting 250 milliseconds, 500 milliseconds with the old technology. What kind of latency do you have with this newer hardware?
So we're using the Focusrite box. We just happen to be compatible and work. Most audio interface boxes will work, and you can generally get the latency of the audio in and out down to like 1 or 2 milliseconds. They can run it. So when you change the sample size, like it's 16, 32, 64, all the way down to 1024. So if you get your sample size rate down very low, then it's basically saying I'm taking 1 millisecond of analog audio, turning it into digital, putting it in the computer. Most computers and boxes will be able to do that. And if you've then got to send that over the internet, then the speed that you need to be running at that's an extra challenge to then send 1 millisecond packet. Every millisecond you send a packet of audio to someone else. It's got to get to them in time with no delays. So we tend to have to run at about 8 milliseconds for the in and out in order to then get it clean, so that you have a latency of maybe 10 to 15 milliseconds of internet latency. So you add the latency of your in and out, AD to conversion, internet latency. As long as that's under 25 milliseconds, you're fine. So pretty much any AV box that we've used will have the ability to get down to those very small latencies. So in Behringer, started using the Rodecaster Pro, Focusrite, that most of them can do that. They just need to have direct monitoring on them. So the ability to monitor your audio straight off the input, as opposed to monitoring audio goes in a computer and back.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, John. That was a great question. And we have one very last question, which is from Paul. Paul, would you like to ask your question, please?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Really enjoyed the presentation. And
Thanks,
I'm
Paul.
sorry, I was trying to interrupt because you were talking about Rocksmith. I'm a developer, and I released an app 2 months ago called Instrument Studio VR, and it has every instrument you want to play: pianos, guitars, acoustic guitars, bass. You can sing, drum kits, percussion, full recording desk, all virtual, completely
Wow,
virtual.
that's
You
great.
don't need a real instrument. It's been out about 2 months, and I've been through every bit of pain you've been through, from latency and everything like that. So I haven't got on the multiplayer, but even for me, I have to get down to about 11 milliseconds of latency, otherwise it sounds rough. And we could do with less than that, so it's just a constant ongoing battle. But we'll have to get together afterwards and pass you on the details, because it's the world's first complete recording studio. You don't need anything. You can record vocals, all the effects. You can use pedals with it. So I'm an independent developer, so not everyone knows about it yet, you know. But it's something I'd love to get to you. We're hoping to get it into schools, into places and organisations like yourself. So instead of £20,000 for a studio, it's €20, you know. So that's where we come from. We've been building in accessibility features from the start. So you can play sitting, standing, room scale. You can also play sitting as if you were standing and move about. And also we've brought in now voice control, so you can control a lot of the recording, moving about, all the instruments, just with your voice. And I want to bring more of that in, you know, especially after watching you. It's given me good inspiration. So we'll have to have a chat. But
Yeah, for
sure.
sure. We'll stick around for another 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
I think we can just hang out in
really enjoyed
the
it.
foyer there. Afterwards.
Great.
So,
well,
yeah.
I can certainly tell you, Paul, that you're on in a global conference now, so there's going to be more people hearing about your software now. So, well done. Let's give him a clap.
Oh, thank you. You can check it out on YouTube. Skywatcher VR. I've got videos there, so it's a cheap way for everyone to get into music at a low cost. So
that's
awesome.
it.
It's not a plug.
Thank you so much.
It is about just one last thing, a little story and a bit of advice. I did a demo last week to a guy. He had an arm function. He couldn't walk in an electric wheelchair, and I gave him a few demonstrations in VR. He absolutely loved it. But I put the touch controllers on the back of his chair, on the handles, and after his demo, the guy about turned and drove out of the conference and go all the way home. So my touch controllers were 4 miles away from the venue. So just a bit of advice. Never do that. Never be as stupid as I was.
That's some extended hand presence there.
Yeah.
Your hands are 4 miles away.
I'll give you some love there, Paul.
Thank you very much. But
Good tip. Thank you.
Keep her lips.
That's great. Fantastic questions, folks. Thank you so much. If you want to hang around afterwards and speak to Ben a little bit more, we do have a social area that you can go to, which is just out the back. There's a portal that will take you to a social area if you want to. We
Is
have
that
got
portal
another
working?
session.
It hasn't been working the last
Has it not?
a few days.
Okay.
So
well,
there
I mean,
is an event.
we're okay.
There is a social area in the events, but I'm happy just to chat out there if it's
Okay,
easier.
we've got another event in here in about 10 minutes time. So just to give you an idea of what's coming, so in a few minutes time we've got mindfulness in VR, and we're going to do something a little bit special, because actually the event is taking place on the Engage platform. But what we're going to try and do is, we've never done this before, so we'll see how it goes. We're going to try and live stream to YouTube and then run the YouTube video in here. So actually, if you're not able to go into Engage, if you don't have the Engage platform installed, in this room, we're going to be live streaming the mindfulness session from Engage. So you can still join in, you can still be part of it, even if you don't have the Engage platform. And that's going to be in around about 10 minutes time or so. And then in an hour's time, we've got from the V Coaching team, a session called How is Learning Creative Arts Made Better with VR? So if that's something that interests you, then that's in about an hour's time. Okay, so I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you very much, Ben, and Jeanette as well, and thank you to the crowd fantastic
Thank
questions
you.
coming out today. So give you some emojis. Thank you so much, guys. Really enjoyed the session today, and I hope you enjoyed it
Let's get a
too.
selfie photo. I'm going to go. Jeanette, you want to come next to me, and
let's
if everyone can gather around there, and I'll get a
come and gather around. We'll
selfie
have a
shot.
selfie.
Here
Come
we
on,
go.
Jeanette.
Jeanette, can you come in and next to me? Let's get a quick photo.
And let's have some emojis, people.
Here we go. Where's Jeanette?
Am I there?
So can you come behind me? Yeah, just come next to me there. Here we go.
Emojis. That's the new cheese. Got it?
Great. Hang on. Wow,
Lovely.
here we go.
Oh, one more. Hang on. More emojis.
Here we go. Thanks, everyone. And
That's fantastic.
yeah, I'll
Thank
turn
you
off
so
my
much.
amplify voice so that it's not going to beam through the room, and then we'll just hang out here for 5 minutes.
Right. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. Great seeing you all, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Tim.
Nice one.
Jeanette.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
Thanks ever so much, Ben.
Thanks, guys.
And thank you,
Nice
Jeanette,
work.
as well.